There's a difference between knowing a place and knowing a place. Like if you've lived in the Denver metro area for a while, you might know the major intersections of the highways, I-25, I-70. You might know that if you're not careful, you might end up having to pay a toll fee. But there's a difference between knowing the major highways and knowing how to pronounce the weird names of the roads. You know, if you've lived in Longmont your whole life, you know that road that runs on the west side of town is called Hover. But if you are every other person in the world, that road is called Hover. And you also will know that just because we have these numbered streets that go east and west, that you can't just jump on one and go all the way across town. Some of them end for no reason. You'll also know, if you've been here for a long time, that there's always road construction on 3rd. Somewhere on 3rd, there's whether it's bypass or, and here's the thing, like you can get from one end of town to the other end of town based off of GPS directions. You remember when Apple Maps first came out, and you'd put in an address and you'd end up in the middle of a dairy farm? Google Maps did the same thing. This is my worst case scenario for when I'm trying to find someplace. Somebody who insists on giving vocal directions over the phone. Guys, if you're trying to tell me how to get to your place, Bing's place is the worst for this. Google doesn't know where Bing lives. Google knows everything, and Google doesn't know where Bing lives. You start telling me directions to a place over the phone, and I immediately tune you out. I don't want to know past that. I don't know why, but then there's something that happens once you've exercised that muscle. We had this experience when Tony and I were in Bentonville, Arkansas, back in March, and we used Google Maps over and over and over again to get where we wanted to go. And finally, I said to Tony, I'm like, let's just try to do it without the maps. Because as soon as we do it without the maps, as soon as we do it without the directions, it becomes a part of us. It becomes a part of how we see, and we begin to make all of the connections. They actually have done studies on taxi drivers in New York City and in London and places like that that are really complicated, on the brains of taxi drivers. The part of the brain that is responsible for spatial awareness in taxi drivers is significantly larger than the parts of brains of people who are not taxi drivers. They just have all of these little connections, these places, these routes, and they see how it all connects together. We're not always good at that. We open up our Bibles and we read the heading, Jesus restores a demon-possessed man. How did we get here? So I'd like us to do a little bit of an exercise this morning. You can do your star jumps later, Bing. If you don't know what that is, that's British for jumping jack. It's my favorite thing ever. We learned that from one of Alexa's teachers during parent-teacher conferences. But I want you to imagine with me, like let's put on our imagination hats, okay? So let's close our eyes. Imagine waking up this morning. Imagine waking up and being alone. You're in a cemetery. You've been run out of town. You have been pushed to the margins. People have attempted to subdue you. There's shame. There's pain. There's torment. Everyone else around you has given up on you. No family. No friends. No connections. No one's coming for you. The sun rises. You can't feel the warmth. Today is just another day. On the other side of the lake, a group of people who are weary from the activity and work that they have been doing. A group of people who is ready for the day to be over, really honestly. They're tired. Their leader says, hey, we have to go to the other side of this lake. And they all jump into this boat. And as they jump into the boat, their fearless leader immediately falls asleep. And then a storm picks up. It's raging. Seasoned fishermen are afraid for their lives. They're afraid that they're going to go under. They're going to go down with the ship. They panic. They freak out. They wake their leader. And I don't know if they wake their leader so much because they want him to do something about the storm or want them to be participating in the chaos that's going on, because sometimes that's just what you need. You just need somebody to, like, hey, you're sleeping and we're all over here freaking out. That's not okay. Or if they wanted him to help bucket water out of the boat. The leader, as you might have guessed, Jesus, stands up and rebukes the wind, the wave, and the faithless disciples. There's a story in the book of Luke where a son asks for his inheritance, and he goes off to far off country. That's where Jesus is headed. To far off country. The other side of the lake is completely different territory. Different rule, different reign, different customs. Jesus says to his disciples with urgency, we must go to the other side of the lake. I think sometimes we read stories and we walk through this story about this man in Mark chapter 5. And we pay attention to the different details, the fact that he's, tormented by demons, and the demons go live in pigs, and we pay attention to those details, but we don't really connect with the desperation of that man. I mean, the story tells us, he's breaking chains that people are putting on him, breaking them. It says he's cutting himself with rocks. He's in anguish. I think in some ways we turned this guy into a monster. We turned this guy into this character, this caricature, but he's not. He has a mom. He has a dad. He has family. He has a story. He has history. He had hopes. He had aspirations. He had dreams. He was a little boy. He played. He used his imagination. And somewhere along the way, things went off the rails for him. We don't know the story. But it's there. I was driving through Longmont last night, on the way back from helping my brother with a project he's working on, and saw some people walking down the street. I imagined for a second, being in that person's shoes. I imagined for a second, and the circumstances led me to think about my own father, who is addicted to drugs, who has a story, who has a history, who has a background and a place and an origin, who was a little boy, who's living out the narrative that he finds himself in now. I began to imagine what was he doing at that moment, that place. There's a difference between knowing a place and knowing a place. We're going to look at this story, and I just want us to sit. I know that this is not like a warm and fuzzy feeling, but I just want us to sit in the cemetery with this man, in the graveyard. with the prospects that this man carried. The disappointments. This is not how he wanted his life to go. This is not where he wanted to find himself. This is not how he wanted things to be. Verse 5, or chapter 5, verse 1 says, they went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one can bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons from his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." He begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on a nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us out among the pigs. Allow us to go into them." He gave them permission. And the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this to the town and countryside. And the people went out to see what had happened. They came to Jesus. They saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind. They were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man and told all about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave the region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you, how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and the people were amazed. It's amazing how we arrive at these intersection points in our lives. We arrive at this place where it doesn't feel like it can get any more desperate than this. It doesn't feel like it can get more difficult than this. It doesn't feel like it can be any more broken than this. It's easy for us to, in those moments, for us to sink into that and to begin to inhabit that place. Just like this man did. He'd given up hope. He'd given up hope on trying. on trying to fit into the society, trying to fit into the culture, trying to fit in with family, he had hurt people, he had hurt himself, he's ruined every opportunity that he's had. He's moved in, made residence in this place. I think in some ways that's a defense mechanism that we have. It's easier to give up on the idea of hope than it is to continue to be disappointed. This man sat in his disappointment and discouragement and fear and pain and anguish. But you know what? What he didn't know is that Jesus was coming for him. Jesus was coming for him. Jesus stopped what he was doing for him. We find ourselves in desperate situations as humans, and we convince ourselves that there is no hope. Listen, let's just be really honest. Hope is a dangerous thing. Hope is this thing that you get your hopes up, that you're going to get that thing, this next thing, this next prayer is going to get answered. This one is actually going to come true. And then you're disappointed. Nobody else has ever had that happen this week? It's hard for us to remember that in the middle of that hopeless situation, in the middle of that broken place, in the place where we have given up on our dreams, we as a church have core purposes that we've been talking about quite a bit lately: making friends, finding family, releasing dreams. There's a reality, though, that is behind all of that. There comes a point where the things in your life have led you to the point where the only dreams you have are nightmares. The only dreams that you have are disappointments. The only dreams that you have are broken. It's really difficult to have a dream for the future when you are constantly living in fight or flight mode. It's difficult when you don't know how things are going to work out to have hope for the future. And if you do, it's like that's kind of like a numbing agent. That actual hope is a numbing agent. But the reality is that in the middle of that desperate situation, right where you are today, broken, hopeless, discouraged, afraid, right where you are right now, who you are today, exactly the way you are today, Jesus sees you. And he's not disappointed in you. And he is coming for you to restore you. That this is what's beautiful about this story, is that Jesus, from across the lake, sees this man, tormented, broken, stops what he's doing, takes all of his disciples across the lake, takes a group of people across the lake, intervenes in this man's life, and immediately gets back in the boat and goes back across the lake. The only thing he was there for, the only point of him going across the lake was for this man. That tells me that no matter how desperate your situation, no matter how difficult your situation, no matter how broken your situation is, you're worth it to Jesus. You're worth the extra trip. But there's a little detail at the end of the story. The man, rightfully so, like all of his pain and all of his difficulty and all of the ugly things that he's experienced has been on that side of the lake. Why wouldn't he want to go with Jesus? Get out of here. He begs, it says he begs Jesus to take him with him. Jesus says, no, stay. Jesus recommissions him. Jesus sees him. Jesus restores him. And then Jesus recommissions him. We don't always see all of the little intersections in our lives. We don't see how this broken season that we're in intersects with this thing that's happening over here that's going to lead to the thing that changes everything, not only for ourselves, but for the people around us. We don't see how this broken place that we find ourselves in, where we no longer have the capacity for dreams. We no longer have the capacity for imagination. We're in that place, and we're on that trajectory. Desperate. Is intersecting with something that's coming for us. Something that wants to heal, wants to restore, wants to bring wholeness. And for those of us who are here and we're like, well, I've been a Christian and I don't do drugs and I've never lived in a cemetery. Well, you know what? Guess what? I have news for you. God's not done with you either. The things that you thought you were done dealing with, God's going to continue healing those things. And I can tell you right now, that's not always fun. Or easy. God is coming for you. God wants to heal those broken places. God wants to bring you back to the place of wonder. Do you ever wonder why Jesus says that to come to him we have to be like little children? That you don't have to tell a kid how to use their imagination. You don't have to tell a kid how to dream bigger. You don't have to tell a kid how to imagine something more fantastic than this. Have you ever? They're always like, imagine this. If we did this and then that. What if we did this? Nothing is impossible for them. That God ultimately wants us to come back to that place where that little boy, that little girl still had the capacity to dream. He, she, still in there. I mean, might be hiding, might be afraid. God's in the business of restoring broken dreams. There's something about the imagery of the broken glass in the PowerPoint display and the imagery in the passage where the man is holding onto these stones. There's something about us that wants to hold really tightly. We don't want to let go. Even though that is causing us pain, causing us discomfort, causing us challenge. If we just hold on just a little tighter. What if God wants us to let go of those things? God wants to restore, recommission, reenact, reinvigorate your imagination. What if? Like all we have left are these pieces of broken glass. We hold on to them because that's all we have left. What if God wants to make something beautiful? I'd like to invite our worship team back up. This morning, right where you're at, the you that you are today, not a different version, not a version that you have to clean up, sort out, make presentable. The you that you are today, Jesus is coming for. He loves you. He's crazy about you. Drop what he's doing. That speaks to me. Drops what he's doing for you to heal and restore. Right where you're at. All of the successes, all of the failures, all of the disappointments, all of the broken pieces. He sees you. He sees you. God, this morning I'll offer up all of the broken pieces. Broken pieces of my dreams and my hopes and my ambitions and the things that I thought defined me. The things that I thought were me. The things that I do, the things that I don't do, the things that I am no longer able to do. I offer those things up to you. I don't have any capacity to make something beautiful from those things, but you do. You restore. You recommission. God, thank you for seeing me right where I'm at, right in the place that I'm at. God, this morning, for those of us here who desperately need real hope, God, I pray that you would show up for us. You would show up for us. The disciples asked as Jesus was crossing the lake, as he calmed the sea, as he calmed the storm, they asked the question, who is this man? Who is this man? The man on the other side of the lake never asked that. He knew. We want to know. Not secondhand knowledge, God.